All right. Well, good morning, everybody. This is Jomo Stewart here at the Fairbanks Economic Development Corporation. Back in the bowels are Mr. Wilkin as well here at FEDC. Today is Tuesday, August 24th. We are right around 8 a.m. and we're here for the Energy for Alaska Task Force meeting. Today, our guest on a slightly different subject is actually President of Explore Fairbanks, Mr. Scott McCrea, here to give us our tourism update. We're not quite through the summer season, but we've got a good chunk of it behind us. So I thought it'd be a good time to get a feel for how our tourism season went or has gone up to this point in the year. So Mr. McCrea, if I may, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you, Jomo. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to come talk to this fine group of people this morning. Give you a little update on where we are for 2021, both in terms of the positive news, which is there is quite a bit, as well as some of the less than positive news, which there's a good share of that. And then also take a chance to kind of look ahead to what we're forecasting going into 2022. I'm not going to dwell on the 2020 season. I think that information has been presented before. It was just bad in every aspect of the visitor industry. So we're trying to put 2020 ahead of us. I mean, behind us to the greatest extent possible. So let's start off with talking about the positive news for where the 2021 season has gone, and we have performed much better than we anticipated for 2021, especially given some of the challenges we knew we had going into the season. A lot of pleasant surprises. And one of the big ones that we were really pleased with as the summer season approached was just how much more airlift we received at the Fairbanks International Airport, with that 33% increase in passenger capacity. That's capacity, doesn't necessarily translate to actual passengers, over 29 at the Fairbanks International Airport. New carriers coming in, American Airlines with their Dallas direct flight, with their Chicago direct flight. That was a little reception we did to welcome the American Airlines Dallas flight back in May. Sun Country, low-cost carrier doing weekly service from Minneapolis. Delta expanding to Salt Lake City. And that showed, I think, that the confidence that the airlines had, that even without a cruise season, that they saw that there was potential in what we had to offer as a destination. It remains to be seen how much that service we saw for this summer is going to carry over to next summer. Quite a few of the carriers, Sun Country in particular, with their weekly Minneapolis service, it has not performed as they would like. So we're getting close to that time of year where we try to reach out to those airlines to see what information they need as they start making decisions for 2022. One of the things that happened with this increase in capacity, increased in service, which probably most of you are aware of, is that we had just amazingly historically low airfares, the types that we have never seen here in Fairbanks, to the extent that Scott McMurran, he's an Alaskan travel writer. He does this blog called the Alaska Travelgram. He was writing earlier this summer that for people in Anchorage, their best bet for cheap tickets out of Alaska is to drive up to Fairbanks and fly from Fairbanks to places like Salt Lake City, which was having, one-way fares for $59. I mean, it was crazy. So what we saw with that, with this low cost service, is we had a lot of last minute bookings. That was kind of a theme for this summer, is last minute travelers. Very unusual for us. Typically Fairbanks and Alaska in general, we're the type of destination that people plan months in advance, that they save money months in advance to be able to make that bucket list trip here. In this case, you had families, on a Monday looking ahead to a weekend saying, well, I could take my Johnny and Susie and grandma to Fairbanks for the same cost of taking them to Applebee's for dinner. So they're doing these last minute trips up here to Fairbanks. And what that meant for us here is, because they were doing last minute trips, they had no idea what they wanted to do once they got here. But fortunately, they came and sought us out at the Visitor Information Center, and our staff down there was able to help them with their itinerary. So it's definitely independent domestic market, a lot of multi-generational family that we're seeing this summer. which makes a lot of sense, because if you look back to 2020, I know I said we weren't going to go to 2020. Here we go. A lot of families weren't able to get together. Grandparents were separated from grandkids, et cetera. So I think what we saw is kind of reunion travel, families getting back together and traveling together. We've also seen some of the visitor industry operations that were closed in 2020, opened back up again for this summer, whether it be hotel properties in Denali, such as the McKinley Chalet, the Gold Dredge 8, Riverboat Discovery, opening back up for this summer. They weren't open last summer. They looked different. They felt different in terms of just the overall number of guests, et cetera. But it's good to see those companies being open back up again this summer. The only hotel property that didn't open up this summer here in Fairbanks was the Fairbanks Princess Lodge, but they are planning to open back up in 2022. And then we started to see kind of the return of small meetings, events, conferences, seeing some of that return to the business travel. We hosted back in first week of August. We had as this group probably knows as well, the Alaska Defense Forum, Alaska Municipal League meetings were held here. I think that was probably the biggest in-person meeting conference that we've had here in Fairbanks, since March of 2020. So, like I said, we've been very pleasantly surprised with where the season has gone, and it's continuing. This on Saturday, we kicked off the start of our Aurora season here in Fairbanks, August 21st to April 21st. That's what we consider. That's the dates we land on for our dates of the Aurora season. And we're still staying, pretty busy with that independent growth. Hotel occupancy has been good, and that'll continue on until September. But there have been challenges also. So cruising did come back to Alaska, but it did not come back to interior Alaska as much as cruises come to interior Alaska. When our congressional delegation, Senator Murkowski, Sullivan, Congressman Young, they were able to pass earlier this summer the exemption to the Passenger Vessel Services Act of 1886 to allow for those cruise ships coming out of Seattle to bypass our friends in Canada and make their way up to Alaska, which pretty remarkable feat. It was bipartisan support all across the board, signed by President Biden. I don't know how often that happens in this day and age, but it happened with this one. So cruise ships have come back to Alaska this summer, but it's just been those round trip cruises coming out of Seattle, going up through Southeast Alaska. It wasn't those cross Gulf Alaska cruises that come up to Seward or Whittier, and then people take the land tour up to Fairbanks. That typically accounts for 41% of our visitation in the summertime. So we didn't see them this summer. We'll see them again next summer. We're very thankful for those Southeast Alaska communities that are much more reliant on cruise ships than we are, that they saw some of that business for this summer. Of course, U.S.-Canada border, highway travel typically accounts for 10% of our summer visitation. The border closure did not make that possible this summer. Of course, Canada eased their restrictions back at the beginning of this month. The U.S. has extended its closure from, it was going to be August 21st. They were going to re-examine that deadline, but going to September 21st. So didn't see that that highway traffic coming through. And of course, international travel, that typically makes up about 16% of our summer visitation, typically from German-speaking Europe by way of Condor, which that was one of the carriers that did not come this summer. So, but we're still, even though, so we look at, those three areas there, that accounts in typical years for about 65% of our typical summer visitation. Like I said, when we look at the positivity signs, it's pretty impressive we did as well as we did with that independent leisure market, given that we've lost a significant share of our typical demographic. And we have, as we look into the remainder of 2021, of course, we're all keeping our eye on the Delta variant and what impact that it's going to have on us. We're hearing some anecdotal stories, some tour companies saying they have guests who have canceled their bookings because of the variant. Not necessarily because of what's happening here in Fairbanks or Alaska. It's just concerns over over travel and over in general. So obviously, this is one we're keeping an eye on to see what potential impact that could have for the remainder of this year. And then the two unexpected challenges that we did not see going into this summer season. One that's been talked about before, of course, is the rental car shortage. We got into April and we got word that rental cars were pretty much booked up through the end of summer here. Especially challenging given that we knew we were going to see independent visitors coming through, and independent visitors are the types that need to rent cars, need to rent RVs to be able to get around not just Fairbanks, but along Alaska's road system. So we put out back in the beginning of summer, you can see there, we reached out to all of our partners to do a transportation survey to say, okay, what do you guys have available? Whether it be hotels who are expanding their shuttle service. You had the Museum of the North who is doing shuttles from the Morris Thompson Center here all the way up to campus, talking about the bus system, Turo, et cetera. So it seemed we had not heard as many concerns as we did earlier this summer. We did have even airlines telling us back in May, said we have people who are canceling their tickets because they can't find a rental car. And this, of course, is not just a Fairbanks specific issue. It's Anchorage has the same issue, and the entire country has the same issue. Of course, it's related to rental car companies last year selling off portions of their fleet with the hopes of replenishing them this year. But we have a manufacturing issue with microchips, so we're hoping, looking ahead to 2022, that manufacturing will pick back up speed. And then even bigger than that has been the employment challenge, the shortage of within the industry workforce development, which again is shared with the rest of the country and is shared with industries just across the spectrum. But it seems that the hospitality and leisure industry has been hardest hit with trying to regain its workforce. Last year for 2020, about 40% of the jobs lost in the Fairbanks region were related to the hospitality industry. So a lot of people are not coming back to work yet. There's a variety of, I think, reasons. If you look at what state and national economists are saying there. One of them, of course, the reason why we have the challenge this summer too has to do with the J1 program that allows international students to come over and work in the U.S. That makes a pretty big portion of our industry workforce during the summer months, Denali especially, and within the hotels and restaurants. There's been issues, with that program, with the being able to process the passports, et cetera. I think Alaska, they had like 200 J1 students for this summer, the entire state, and it's typically about 10 times that amount. So what's that meant with the employment challenges? If you've been to one of your favorite restaurants in Fairbanks, you've probably encountered reduced hours, reduced days that they've been worked, that they're open, longer wait times. It's definitely impacted the restaurant industry. It's impacted our hoteliers. Who haven't been able, in a couple of cases, have not been able to open at full capacity because they don't have the staff, housekeeping staff, et cetera, to keep things up and running. And we've had, even some of our tour companies have said, we've had to turn away clients coming here because we don't have drivers or we don't have guides. So it's something Explore Fairbanks, and something as we look ahead to 2022. Our role is to market to visitors, but one of the things we're looking at taking a more expanded role in is how do we market to potential employees to come and work in the visitor industry, and we plan to do a full court press on that going into 2022. Feel free I can stop and answer questions along the way. I see something came up in the chat here.
Yes. So just so everyone, please be reminded, if you have any questions, you may unmute and fire away. I have questions, but I think you may end up covering them. So I was just going to be patient. Now, Luke's, we did have a comment from Mayor Hopkins that he tried to rent a cab at U-Haul, but he needed to have it back quickly because they're using his rental car.
Yeah.
How recently was that, Luke?
That was last Sunday.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's persisting.
Yeah. That's been happening all summer. Yeah, U-Hauls. If you've seen U-Hauls around town, it's a good chance it's not necessarily someone who's moving from one house to the next. It's a visitor moving from one place to the next.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I was anecdotally, this is Tanya. One of my aunts came up to visit the family homestead and couldn't get a rental car in Anchorage, so she bought a used Suburban, which who can find a used car right now? Drove it and then went back to Anchorage from the Kenai and returned it to the dealer to sell and flew back out of state.
That's one way to do it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, you drive around, you look at the car lots in Fairbanks, they're a lot emptier than they used to be. You know, a lot of people here, once they, Turo kind of picked up speed here this summer. That's like Airbnb for cars. So I've known some people, they bought a used car and they knew within a month, maybe 2 months, they would have it. It'd be paid off by being able to rent it out.
So I do have a question, Scott. You mentioned again a pretty radical limiting of where we would normally get our visitors from.
Mm-hmm.
The cross Gulf, Canada, international travel, upwards of 2/3 of what our normal flow would be. What do we have any kind of feel for the net? Like again, how far down is our tourism off of, say, 2019 numbers? You said.
Well, actually, I have some. That's a good question, Joe. And I got some slides here that will speak to some of that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, so let's take a look at some of the data that we track here to help us get a sense of visitation to Fairbanks. So this slide we have, this is total passengers. These are arrivals and departures at the Fairbanks International Airport. Let's see, the green line is 2019. The blue line there is 2020, and then the yellow line with percentages is 2021. And so those are percentages in comparison 2021 versus 2020. So you can see that we actually started off January, February. We were down under 2020, and January, February of 2020 were record months. I mean, that's the part, I know I said I'm not going to talk about 2020, but here I go. 2020 was, by all of our predictions, was going to be a record year for us. So that's why it was, troubling for many reasons that we went in the direction that we did. But by March, we started picking up, and then, these percentages, for April, in April of 2020, there was one day at the Fairbanks Airport, I think it was April 11th, where they had a total of 22 people that were screened through TSA. So April is typically a pretty slow month as it is, but you can see we had some rebound there, 819% over 2020. And then May was good. And so obviously, once, we hit March there, we performed much better. And you actually see that comparison there. So June 2021 versus June 2019, only a reduction of 12%. Again, it's one of the things that we were surprised about. But keep in mind, though, that's spread out over, again, going back to how much more air service passenger capacity we had, that's spread out over more carriers. And so year to date, comparing 2021 versus 2019, we're down about 51% at the halfway point there. And then this is these are some impressive numbers here. They don't necessarily jibe up. We always like it when our data matches, and this doesn't really match up too much. So this is occupancy rates there that's provided. This is about 70% of our local hotel properties with an average of 70 rooms or more who provide us with this data. So this is not an entire snapshot of every hotel property within the Fairbanks North Star, the North Star borough there. So the percentages, again, that's comparing the 2021 versus 2020. January, February, we're down, just as the air service shows. And then going into April and May, our occupancy rate was actually not only higher than 2019 for both April and May, it was among the highest we've seen since we've been reporting this data for the past almost 5 years now. So that was pretty impressive. And what we think it was, for April in particular, April is our quietest month here in Fairbanks, in Alaska, as a destination. But what we think that was is, if you look what was happening nationally, end of March or so, that's when the vaccinations were being more widely distributed. People were getting fully vaccinated. I think the April and May, what we saw there is that pent up demand, combined with the low air costs, just kind of coming together, to create this, to create these numbers there. And then June, we were slightly under where we were for 2019. So hotels have done pretty well. Now, again, number of rooms has been reduced because of some not being at full capacity because of the housekeeping issue. I mentioned the Fairbanks Princess Lodge, they're not in these numbers because they weren't opened up. But great occupancy rates, and the average daily rate is also among the highest that we've seen, and since we've been reporting this data as well. Here at the Morris Thompson Cultural and Visitors Center, this is our number of visitors coming through the center. Kind of tough making that comparison to April and May of 2020 because we weren't open to visitors for April and May, but then June and July. And this is where you can see, typically, here at the Morris Thompson Center, in the months of June, July, we average about 1,000 visitors that come through a day. We might have hit 500 a couple of times, but definitely a reduction in the numbers coming down there, which in some ways has been good because we've been operating at a greatly reduced staff. We had the same challenges of trying to hire employees as our other companies do. And as I mentioned before, the type of visitors who are coming require a lot of handholding because they're coming here and they're looking for their entire itinerary in Fairbanks being planned. So they're not just coming to pick up a brochure and be on their merry way. They're coming to say, I'm in Fairbanks, help me out. And then, Bob Ely and others on staff here are spending, up to half an hour helping them plan their time here in the Golden Heart.
Do you mind going back just a second, Scott?
Sure.
So how reflective, if at all, do you think this is as far as the way people are getting around town? Again, normally with the cruise ships, what do they come up on a bus? And so they kind of come as a group over to the Thompson Center, and now they're coming as individuals. You
are correct. Yeah, usually, during the summertime, a good bulk, I'm not sure what the breakdown is percentage wise, but it is those group tours, whether it be Holland America or Princess or the land only tours with the multitude of other companies. We're typically in any land tour itinerary, those land tour itineraries, Fairbanks is usually a 2-day, maybe 3-day stay at most. Within that itinerary, the Morris Thompson Cultural and Visitor Center is one of the stops there. So there's still some, there's been some group tours this summer with those land-only programs. Even Holland American Princess did some land-only programs for this summer as well. But of course, nowhere near the numbers that we typically see.
Okay. And we do have a question in the chat box. I'm not sure if it might be covered on another slide, but it seems to be regarding in-state travel. And if we have any kind of visibility on have we had an increase of, say, from again, in-state visitors?
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't really have a way to break down where the visitors coming from. There's no logbook, that they signed. We do know, last summer, that's pretty much what kept our industry alive, really. What last summer was the in-state, the in-state market. We did a lot of our market for last summer, we put our typical marketing resources that go into national and international advertising to within the in-state market. So to encourage our friends down in Anchorage and other parts of the state to come up to Fairbanks for the summer, and they're doing the same vice versa. So it was pretty high last summer. For this summer, I'm not sure how much of that, if those numbers have necessarily remained the same.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Whoops. So a stat of a different type has to do with our website traffic. And looking back to 2020 at all our various stats, while most of them, there were significant decreases over 2019, the areas that we've seen remarkable increase in, not just comparing 2020 to 2019, but also 2021, has to do with our website traffic. It has to do with our social media traffic, Facebook likes, Instagram followers. And I think it has to do with that. We really amped up our advertising marketing significantly over the last year. A lot of this has been that some of the grants that we've received. There's been grants available from the state, federal grants that were focused on tourism destinations, marketing, COVID safety messages. So we had our advertising director, Casey Gillum, had that opportunity to really expand, put our typical advertising plan on steroids. So we were out there in a lot of different markets and a lot of different methods too. So you kind of see with, of course, with this advertising, it's all about directing to our website. So you can kind of see some of the increases there in our new visitors to the explorefairbanks.com website over just this year, with that pretty remarkable growth there. And one of the campaigns that we launched that we got funds from, let me make sure I can share audio here when I play this video. We received a COVID safety travel grant from DCCED. Other tourism destinations in the state received that as well, where they wanted us to market the vaccines, because back in June, we had that availability for visitors to arrive at the airport to get their vaccines. So it was about a $360,000 grant, which is pretty good for us to get that type of money. So we pushed a lot of this advertising out into those markets where we were getting the air service from, so we could try to bolster up some of those numbers there. But here, little bells and whistles for you on this Tuesday morning. I'll play this video if the technology works.
Actually, Scott, before you do that.
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. I notice both 2019 and 2020, there's an uptick in those website pings in October, moving through December. Is that the norm?
Was the time to?
Sorry. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So there's an uptick, say in the October timeframe of pings on the website for both 2019 and 2020. And I'm just wondering, why is that? Or if you think,
I'd have to look back and see what
you think planning for next year, or maybe looking back on their trip.
Probably some of that. Again, like I mentioned, that's typically, in traditional years, normal years, that October to December timeframe is when people are planning their trips for the next year. So that could be a portion of that too. There could have been also, I'd have to look back and see what campaigns we might have been launching around that timeframe that would have resulted in for that period right there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, now on to the bells and whistles. This is
and I heard sound, by the way, so it was
good.
Okay,
excellent. I've only been doing these for a year and a half. Probably have this technology figured out by now.
Was the time to discover spectacular interior Alaska adventure?
Well, let me rewind it here.
This summer, we invite you to explore Fairbanks, Alaska responsibly. Bask in the everlasting sunshine. Now is the time to discover spectacular interior Alaska adventures, attractions, and tours. Hop on a plane, get vaccinated upon arrival. Then, explore the land of the midnight sun. Explore Alaska's golden heart. Explore Fairbanks. Was the time?
Aren't we lucky to live here? Okay, so I'm going to put out my murky crystal ball here and try to give you a sense of what we're thinking 2022 is going to look like. This is that time of year where this is when we're developing our 2022 budget, 2022 strategic plan. So part of that is trying to determine what our bed tax revenue is going to be for 2022, which is directly linked to what do we think visitation is going to look like for next year. So as it stands right now, we are forecasting that 2022 bed tax revenues visitation will be about 75% of 2019, which talking to others, a lot of people said that seems awfully conservative, but we like to be conservative in our forecasting because it's better to go back to our departments and say, well, we did better than we thought, so we can bump up some of that direct marketing as opposed to saying, no, we overshot, so we got to cut some things there. But when I look at the national data about what does return to full recovery look like to pre-pandemic time frame, kind of consistently full recovery, and by full recovery that means the full return of international markets, which is a lot of question marks on what international visitation is going to look like, going to 2022. Of course, one of the markets, one that we just huge question mark, is the China market. What's going to visitation look like from mainland China going into next year? We know that German-speaking Europe is going to come back pretty strong. When we were making our budget cuts, drastic budget cuts back in April of 2020, one of the things we did is we still maintained our contract. We've had a contractor for Explore Fairbanks, been those 12 years now, who works for us out of German-speaking Europe. We maintained her on a very minimal level just to, again, make sure that she was getting that messaging out there within, German-speaking Europe, about we're here, we're ready for you. Here's the information when you're ready to come back. And we've kept in close contact. We have an amazing relationship with Condor, with Condor Airlines. So they are planning. Condor is planning to come back next summer. They're on the books. They're planning for 14 flights. They've typically only done 13, and this will be their 20th anniversary of service to Fairbanks. We were supposed to celebrate that 20th anniversary back in 2020. Then we thought we'd celebrate it this year. Now we're looking to next year. So the cake's getting stale. Have to bake a new cake for Condor. So international visitation will return, but not to the full extent. The other part that's people are saying as far as forecasting is that full return of business travel might not be until 2024 or 2025. So we don't expect full recovery next year, but we expect to be doing pretty good. We should see that return of the cross Gulf of Alaska cruises. Hopefully our border with Canada will be opened up and we'll get those RVs coming through here for that highway traffic. And I mentioned the international travel. We are concerned again, it's going to take some time to rebuild that workforce, within the industry, which is why we have a focus of what role can we play as a destination organization to help advocate for people, especially the younger generation. Right now we want to see there's part of our messaging about jobs related to the visit industry is we have great stories out there of people who started off as baggage handlers, a deckhand on the riverboat, a waiter in such and such restaurants, who went on to a very long and rewarding, successful career within the industry. So we're going to try to capture some of those stories and just, talk about not just the benefit of having a job, but how this can be a very rewarding career. So we're trying to craft some of that messaging there to help rebuild the workforce going into next summer. Because it's not going to do us much good if we have full recovery with visitors, but we don't have the employees in place to be able to, for the businesses to be open at full capacity and to service the guests coming through here. So I think we're looking at 2022. Of course, we live in unpredictable times, but we feel pretty good about what's looking ahead to next year. And that's what I got to say. I'll be happy to answer any other the questions you all might have.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. President. So I will just open up the floor. If you go ahead, or you can go ahead and take yourself off mute if you have any questions. I would be interested to hear if you have any insights as far as how things did go down in, say, Southeast, where many communities are much more reliant on that tourism dollar.
Yeah, those cruises they were late. They were late coming. I think the first one was just about a month ago, and I think they're going to continue here through the next month. Much smaller numbers, of course, but it's definitely been a benefit to them.
Hey, Scott, John Davis here.
Arctic Winter Games. We know they're going to be, so it's going to be in the next one is actually Mayor Hopkins is going to be in Matsu is going to be hosting the Winter Games. I believe that would be 2023, 2024. So yeah, Matsu we'll have them next as far as here in Alaska, but we'd love to bring that back up here to Fairbanks. I've had some conversations with the Matsu CVB. Our counterpart down there is playing a big role in it. And told them, I said, get ready. This is a big community endeavor to make this happen successfully. That was a great event.
Thank you. Mr. Davies.
Yeah. Scott, thanks. Just a question about workforce and the J-1 visa issue and stuff like that. Have you looked into that, and do you expect any changes there?
We're hoping, yeah, that has been, John, that has been you mentioned that's been a pretty big challenge for us. We are monitoring this one to see if there's anything we need to kind of, officially act upon for advocacy with our congressional delegation. It's been, tied to a number of things, from the travel restrictions. I think there's been a significant delay in being able to process those passports, but it's something we're going to need that back. You're looking ahead to next summer. That's a program that we're going to need back to the capacity it used to be able to meet the visitation coming through. Like I said, there was some coming through. Typically, a lot of our J1 students that we've had here in interior Alaska have been from Eastern European regions. And the ones that I've heard that have had some places in Anchorage coming from Jamaica and other countries that we typically don't get those J1s from. But yeah, we're definitely tracking on that one. It's a great program.
We'll follow up. So is it a constriction? Is the bottleneck, again, processing capacity, or was it the COVID-related travel restrictions? So
yeah, I think a mixture of both of those, Jomo. I think it's a kind of a mixture of both those items.
Yeah. Okay.
Jomo, yeah.
All right. Further questions? Well, Scott, you know what, guys? I won't make us wait through the whole hour. Of course, Scott is readily accessible over there at the Moore Thompson Community Center, Explore Fairbanks, available by phone, email. If you do have any further follow-up questions, they're always really great, have great information, are very forthcoming with it. And yeah, thank you, Scott. Actually, it's just really encouraging news. Well, except for the fact that I was thinking about renting a car to go down to the Palmer State Fair. I may have to borrow one of your old cars. Okay.
We see you drive around in U-Haul pickup here.
That's right. I'm just going to get the moving van. Okay. Well, again, Scott, thank you so much. And that is very encouraging. It's nice to see that again, not a full rebound, but a sizable one. And that it has been helping our local businesses survive this very challenging time. We all need to do our part. Okay, well, everybody, again, thank you so much for joining us. Just as a heads up, I'm pretty sure that next week we do have Mr. Bruni, he's the commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation, going to give us an air quality update. And so that, again, I'll be confirming that, but you can look for the email, regarding the scheduling. But that's it. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day. Again, Scott, your whole team, you've always had a phenomenal team, and you all really did a phenomenal job over 2020. And so I just want to be able to praise you highly on recorded record. Again,
thank you, Jomo. Yeah, I'm fortunate. I inherited a pretty amazing team here. So I'm just trying not to break things moving ahead.
Well, you were doing a great job this year, as you always do. But again, last year was something special, and you all really stepped up and met that challenge. So deeply appreciate it on behalf of the community. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day, a great week, and we will see you next Tuesday.